Hello everyone, it's me, Juan, Give Me 54-minute video, and today, we're back doing the Mad Pet Appreciation Run. And, whew, well, I'm gonna just say this, there's gonna be some plans coming up later down the month, okay? Later down, like maybe around summer. Maybe it's a bit Mensoha, maybe it's a bit new gaming stuff coming to the channel, who knows? But me and my brother are talking about it. We're making plans. But anyways, we're gonna be reacting to MadPat quit sugar for 30 days. And oh boy, I don't even want to know the chaos that's about to happen. So make sure you like the video so you guys enjoy. So leave a like in the video if you enjoy content like this. Comment down below. Do you think you can last 30 days without any sugar? And subscribe. We're trying to upload daily. Let's do this.
Do you have a sweet tooth?
Yes.
Next question. This guy right here, he's about to give up sugar for the next month. Spoiler alert, it's gonna change his life.
Dun, 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 dun. Do you think is there any food theories I should? Why?
Hello, internet. Welcome to Food Theory.
I know I'm not supposed to pause as much, but do you think is there any food theory videos that I should react to? Like, do you think I should react to the most popular one? Like, the most popular? I don't know. It feels something right, but you know, I don't know. Should we do that? Like, react to the most watched, the most popular of the 4 channels? I don't know. That could be something. Send MadPat off with essentially reacting to his best videos in each of his channels. Something to think about. Let's do.
So sweet, it might just give you cavities. If you've been watching for some time, you might have noticed that it's kind of hard to have the cleanest of diets when you're the host of a food channel. You're constantly devouring sour candies, super spicy sauces, fast food burgers, edible underwear, sometimes even edible trees. Even outside the realm of this show, though, as a father of a 5-year-old, I am constantly surrounded by unhealthy eating decisions, especially when it comes to sweets. It's something that I didn't really think about until recently, just how much sugar and artificial sweetener I'm consuming all the time. I'm not old by any means. I mean, I'm ancient by YouTube standards, but I'm at least getting to the age where I have to start looking after my own health. So since it's a new year, new me, I decided to cut out sugar for the last month.
What?
Since Misery Loves Company, I'm not going to be alone on this little adventure.
Oh,
Our
no.
social media manager Kai, as well as our live producer Ash, are tagging along and joining me in the
Why you gotta bring them into this?
sugar from our diets to see what physical and mental changes occur when a bunch of sugar fiends like us leave their favorite vice behind. Will we end up feeling healthier? Will we want to continue with this style of eating, or is it just going to be a month of sugar-free misery? So we had our goal in mind and our time
you
frame,
gonna
but as
create
soon as I started
gladiators.
looking
That's
into
what's
the
gonna
logistics
happen.
of this, I realized that, oh boy, sugar is a vague term. We all know by now that our bodies need sugar to function, namely in the form of glucose. But at the same time, we hear reports about sugar being this evil thing that'll leave us with no teeth and a weak heart. So do our bodies need something that's so bad for us, or is sugar not as evil as all the headlines make it out to be? Well, the answer lies somewhere in the middle. Now, pause right here. This is a very confusing topic because there's a lot of discussion about the best terms to use when it comes to talking about sugar. You've probably heard people refer to sugar in 2 groups: good sugars and bad sugars. And let me be
I've
clear
heard about
that.
this.
I'm not trying to assign any sort of moral value to the foods or sugars that you're consuming. These names have more to do with their long-term effects on the human body, because in excess, nothing is good for you, and everyone has different nutritional needs for their diet. So for the purpose of this video, we're going to be sticking with those 2 labels, since they're the ones you're most likely to hear about when you're out in the real world.
Yeah.
That way you'll have the context behind these names and what they actually are, rather than just framing them as what you should eat and what you should never eat. That type of advice, not very helpful coming from me. So with all of that out of the way, I think we can unpause the video and continue with the episode. The sugars that you find in fruits, vegetables, and milk, those are known as good sugars. These sugars are in the cells of their respective foods, and so when you eat them, you're also taking in additional nutrients like fiber, which leads your body's blood sugar to not spike as intensely, instead absorbing the sugar slower. Obviously, though, this is keeping in mind that everything is always dealt with in moderation. If you start eating your body's weight in strawberries every day, it's not going to end well for you. All the other sugars, though, like the ones that you find in donuts, syrups, even fruit juices, those are called free sugars. They're free because they're not inside the cells of the food that we eat, which is why fruit juice has sugar that isn't good for you. If you're confused, well, so were we at first. But essentially, when you squeeze the juice out of a fruit, you're breaking the cell walls, releasing that sugar, but also losing all the other good nutrients that you would otherwise be ingesting. Not to mention, it's also way easier to have more sugar in juice form than in a whole fruit. 200 milliliters of orange juice, or a little less than a cup, it's the same as 4 oranges. Now, you're unlikely to go off and eat 4 whole oranges in a row, but you can easily sit down and drink a cup of orange juice in one sitting. Not only in that sitting are you taking in more sugar, but it's hitting your bloodstream way faster, and that much free sugar can lead to a lot of detrimental effects over time, like heart disease or liver disease. So
Yeah.
naturally, when it came to this experiment, we decided that whole fruits were fair game, but fruit juices, candies, cookies, sodas, and anything else with added sugars, totally off limits.
Dang.
Natural question to follow, though, is about the most unnatural thing that I put into my body, Diet Coke. I mean, it
Oh,
says right
no.
there on the nutritional label, no sugar or added sugars, but those artificial sweeteners inside of it actually get a similar response from the brain as regular sugars do. Sugar is a highly palatable
So you
food
gotta
that triggers
give up
our
your
reward system
your
suitable
your
caloric
love for
input
Diet
and
Coke.
taste.
Oh
Highly
no.
palatable foods, namely those rich in sugars and fats, they can strongly trigger those reward and motivational systems, encouraging food intake beyond the necessary energy requirements. This flood of dopamine in the brain causes our body to want more of that food and can even result in cravings and withdrawals without it, as our brain craves an additional hit of dopamine. Artificial sweeteners like aspartame, they're not just questionable for your health, they also trigger those same reward systems in a very similar way. Basically, while our body can tell the difference, our brains can't. So out the metaphorical window, all those artificial sweeteners go. Speaking of our bodies being dumb, we also realize that other simple carbohydrates like flour, rice, or rice flour, they also tend to act similarly in the body. This is because things like flour contain chains of simple sugars, which are really just glorified carbs. So when they're absorbed by our bodies, our blood sugar spikes in the exact same way, leading to the exact same reactions by our pancreas to release insulin to bring that blood sugar down. The reason this is a bad thing is because over time, our body can develop a resistance to its own insulin, which in turn
Okay.
can lead to things like type 2 diabetes. Cutting these
Oh,
sugars
no.
out meant cutting out things like pastas, certain breads, cereals, waffles, pancakes. The list here goes on and on and on. Before
All
even
right.
starting the experiment, it seemed almost impossible to truly eliminate all sugars from our diet. We all had to become experts at reading nutrition labels and ingredient lists up and down and sideways to make sure that nothing we bought or ate contained any sort of sugar. And friends, I feel compelled to say this right now because what we got ourselves into isn't exactly the brightest idea. It's what's known as a crash diet. And I can't say this enough, but please do not go taking these sorts of extreme diets on your own. Any significant change in what you're consuming on a regular basis is something that you should probably double check with a doctor or some other expert. Us though, we dumb YouTubers, and we just jumped right in. And the consequences are what you're about to witness. So
Oh
without
boy,
any
I
further
knew it. I
ado,
told
let's
you
just
this is
dive
something
into it
gonna be
because the
bad. Oh
results are
no.
astounding. Not just how we felt by the end of it, but how it
Well.
permanently ruined dessert for all of us.
I want fruit right now. I
Well.
want fruit.
I know, it's hard to watch.
Sit down, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, come on! God dang it. 2K, please. I know. I pre-order it, please. 2K is haunting me right now. It's every single video. It's like 2K is haunting me, saying, you want to play it. You want to play. I pre-ordered. Just give me the game already. My apologies for my outbursts.
Hard to watch.
Week 1, let's do this.
Right off the bat, I gotta say, even though I knew that this month was gonna be pretty hard on me, I knew I was in good company with Steph.
Do I have a sweet tooth? Are you kidding? Sugar, I think, if I had to estimate, it's like 80% of my diet.
Ash, too, very proud of their sugar addiction.
I am like a little sugar fiend. It just goes all throughout my veins. I am completely driven by sugar. Yeah, it's not good.
Honestly, it seemed like Kai was the only one not insanely addicted like the rest of us.
I don't always crave sugar constantly.
At least that makes one of us. Kai was also alone in her go-to sweet treat, if you could even call it that.
My go-to sweet treat is an unfrosted blueberry Pop-Tart toasted with a little bit of butter. I will die on the hill that a toasted unfrosted Pop-Tart with butter on it. I see you shaking your head, Josiah. It's S tier.
Yeah, you're gonna be all alone on that one there, Kai. But
Yep.
overall, despite some reservations, we were all excited
The
to start
frosted
the
shall
journey and see
always
how long it would
remain.
take us to start feeling withdrawal symptoms. And when I say withdrawal symptoms, that's exactly what they are, because our bodies do become addicted to sugar. It's not addictive in the same way as, say, like nicotine or other drugs, but over time, high sugar levels, like you get in the average American diet, can physically alter through our brains and affect the levels of dopamine we're getting, making us crave more sugar. In other
Okay.
words, sugar literally changes our brain chemistry and turns us into zombies that crave less brains and more Skittles. Symptoms vary from person to person, but if you ever do
Chocolate.
want to cut out sugar, be prepared for things like anxiety, depressed mood, difficulty concentrating, fatigue, nausea, intense cravings, changes to your sleep patterns. When you say it like that, it makes it sound like the end of a commercial for a medicine. And I tell ya, we got a fair number of those symptoms.
I'm definitely
Oh,
like
gods.
groggier throughout the day. I feel myself getting tired more throughout the day, but not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Maybe guy has something going on with those unfrosted toasted Pop-Tarts, because the rest of us, yeah, we definitely felt the symptoms coming on a bit stronger.
I feel hungry. I feel hungry. That's what I feel.
I feel a little bit like I've gotten hit by a truck.
And she
Oh,
wasn't the
gods.
only one.
So last night I was laying down on my couch. Every bone in my body hurt. It hurt to breathe. I had chills and a fever. It felt like I was really, really
Dang.
Before you start wondering if Ash had the flu or something else, no. They actually went to see the doctor and it wasn't COVID or the flu. It was actually the lack of sugar. What
Oh,
Ash was
no.
experiencing was something called
This is just week
the
1.
carb flu, named after
When
the
did it
trend of
happen?
keto diets. We were all shocked.
Are you gonna
by the
tell
fact
me
that
it
this even
happened like a
existed as
day
thing.
5?
Basically, when you
Or
cut
day-
out
or is
virtually
it
all
earlier
carbs
than
from
that?
your diet, your body
Oh,
goes into
no.
a state of ketosis, where it begins to burn fat instead of the glucose that it's no longer getting. What happens to some people during this process is they begin to feel a different type of withdrawal than what I mentioned before. This one closely mimics the symptoms of the flu: stomach aches, nausea, soreness, dizziness, and brain fog. And Ash was definitely feeling all of those.
My back, my hips, my legs, my head. Everything is killing me and is super painful, and I would love to curl up in a ball on my bed and conk out.
But maybe the worst part of it all, this was just the beginning.
Oh, no.
Honestly, once we got past the first few days, it did get a bit easier. I say a bit because not only did Santi have me quitting sugar, but Amy over on Style Theory had me quitting caffeine for the first 2 weeks of the experiment as well. All the joy that I could potentially have had in my life just poof, gone.
I miss flavor in the
Evaporate.
things that I drink. I want a soda. I want a tea. I want something that has some flavor to it that isn't just water. I love my Air Up bottle, but retronasal olfaction can only get you so far, people. My tongue craves something other than water.
I suppose you could say that I was starting to feel a bit irritable at this point.
Oh, please let me just taste something. Just something, man. I say, and now all the comments are going to be like, Matt, you know that you did an episode how you can taste the differences of water. I know water has a flavor. I get it. But also, not the right flavor.
Just remember, it's not me, it's the sugar, I swear. Despite that little outburst, though, around the 1 week mark, we started to feel like we hit a bit
Oh,
of an
no. Matt Pat
equilibrium.
going crazy.
I feel honestly pretty good. I have, I feel like I've gotten through
Please.
the main
I drink
struggle
water all the
of
time.
everything, of all of the cravings.
Thankfully, Ash was feeling better too and recovered from the keto flu.
I feel fine. I was expecting to feel a whole lot worse after what happened last week, but to be totally honest, things are all right.
The good news was that our energy levels seemed to be coming back to normal. What really started to affect us, though, in week 2 was the foods that we could eat. It really seemed like 90% of our days were dedicated to planning out what we could make for our next meal so that it didn't taste like cardboard. I went from never really thinking about the food that I was going to have for the next meal to constantly thinking about it. You know that, is this a butterfly meme? I felt like that. All this worrying about food and what I'm eating, is this health? What really caught us off guard were the foods that we didn't expect would have sugar, and then having to cross even more things off the list of things that we can eat. Most pasta sauces, lots of canned vegetables that have sugar added for apparently no reason. More and more,
What?
it felt like we had to learn how to photosynthesize with how few foods we were allowed to eat. Luckily, we started to find not just individual foods to eat, but also entire meals. Between sugar-free pastas, sugar-free breads, hot pot steaks, and lots of buffalo sauce, we were able to fill our stomachs, and we all ended up finding little tricks throughout the week that would get us through each and every meal.
So speaking of things with sugar, but things that are allowed to have sugar, I discovered my cheat sheet for this entire challenge. There is one food out there with a very high sugar content that is still allowed on almost every no sugar diet that you look up, and that's dates. It's a total hack. It's a total hack for this experiment.
Finally, it seemed like we were starting to get the hang of things, but there was still one area where we were all struggling.
Week 3. Come on. Week 3.
Despite all the homemade homemade recipes and crafty solutions to keep us from starving to death, in week 3 we were suddenly faced with another obstacle. One that, to be honest, seemed insurmountable. Eating out at restaurants. It's an inevitability for me and Steph, especially when we're on the road traveling for business, because you're not at home. You don't have the ability to cook incredibly specific sugar-free meals. Unfortunately, all of us had to travel in week 3, and man, we learned the hard way how hard a sugar-free diet is to maintain when you're not in the comfort of your house.
Here's the thing that we should talk about this week, which is me venturing out into the world of restaurants. Most small, local restaurants don't have their ingredients really listed out one by one, right? You can't just hop on a website and check the nutrition facts and see, are there added sugars here or anything that might relate to added sugars. So that's really tricky. And then if you go in, you know, it's socially awkward to ask like the waiter or waitress to be like, hey, do you know what gets put into this dish? Steph and I have tried this a couple times, and they've been incredibly polite about it, but also it's socially uncomfortable because you're asking them to go above and beyond. They don't know in a lot of cases, and then they're bothering the chefs in the kitchen, and that's weird. Pretty much 9 times out of 10,
it's
the
weird.
answer you get back is, yeah, everything's got sugar. So, I guess I'm not eating here then. Thank you so much for your time.
It really made it almost impossible to eat out anywhere that wasn't a giant franchise. Smaller, independently owned restaurants don't tend to have their ingredients lists readily available. Meanwhile, big chains like McDonald's or even Outback Steakhouse, they have all their nutritional facts proudly on display at their website for you to go and check out. There's not much at all that you can eat at most of these places, but it is possible to find something. Whether or not you're going to be able to enjoy it is a whole nother
Vegetables.
issue.
I was really hyped when Ash came in the other day and said, like, I figured out a meal at Chipotle that you can have. And I'm like, yes, this is awesome. Then I went in, and it was crushingly disappointing. And so I'm like, well, I guess that was a meal that happened today, and I sustained myself for another day.
Week 3 also brought back the cravings hard. It seemed like we
Oh,
started
no.
to curb them a bit with our newfound love of fruit in the previous weeks, but despite chewing on some blueberries, strawberries, maybe some nuts as a snack, in week 3 when we saw sweet treats, our bodies almost instinctively lunged at them.
I went to my girlfriend's parents' house the other day. My girlfriend brought there some of the Christmas cookies that we made, and she put them in the freezer so that we could have them later, like months after, if we really wanted them. When I tell you, my girlfriend is such a gifted baker, and I watched her parents eat these delicious chocolate chip cookies, and I knew I could not eat them for the purpose of this experiment. Part of me died inside, just a little bit, just a smidgen, but it was enough.
If someone, when
That
after
is
this is all over,
that is
wants
hard.
to hit me up
That
and
is
send me a box of
awful.
Cinnabon
This
and
is
a
torture.
note, I'll love you forever.
And for all of us, the morale started to dip a bit when we realized just how hard it was going to be social throughout the experiment. Doing something like this, as restricting as the diet is, really started to bleed into more areas of
You're
our
kidding.
life than just the kitchen.
The social element of this is the complicating factor. In any
So when do
type
we get
of
to the
sort
part
of
when someone
specialized
becomes a little
diet,
irritated?
What really plays into it much more strongly than you realize isn't the food, it's everything around the food. It's the context of where you're eating, who you're eating with. These diets affect those moments. And so a lot of it's not about the food, it's about where you're eating the food. And it turns out that restaurants are just chock-a-block full of sugar. Every restaurant out there is a dessert restaurant because they put sugar in everything.
I can
Anything with a
relate.
glaze, a sauce, a butter, a cream, and anything, there's sugar in that. You bet your bottom dollar.
You should have seen
Yep.
the eye rolls and looks of concern that we were getting as we went back and forth trying to find a place where we could actually eat at. Granted, we knew that there was a light at the end of the tunnel, but doing this for such an extended period of time really started to seem impossible in week 3.
Week
Speaking of the
4.
light at the end of the tunnel, we were finally starting to see ours 4 weeks in. But just when we thought that we were in the final stretch and our bodies were acclimated, most of us ran
I'm not gonna lie. Every time we do that transition to editing weeks, I don't know why, but my mind's always bringing up like the Full Metal Alchemist, like the Full Metal Alchemist transition, like Full Metal Alchemist. Dun. Full Metal Alchemist. I don't know why. I don't know.
into a wall.
This week has been rough. I was thinking that this far into the experiment that I would be feeling better, that my body would be a lot more used to what I was doing to it by, not ingesting sugar. But it seems like this week has been not good for quite a few of us.
I don't know what happened. I am hungrier this week. I am craving sweets more this week. It's weird. It kind of came out of nowhere. I thought I was through the hardest part of it, and yet here I sit, and I am craving just literally anything sweet. My body is just desperate for it.
Honestly,
We're
it seemed
just-
like Ash
we're-
was the only one to come out
We're
unscathed
waiting for the
this week.
anger.
Yeah, man, I'm
I'm doing fine. I've kind of hit that equilibrium phase.
Where's that
You know,
rage?
nothing too crazy, but I'm also not
All right,
like,
where's
I
the
don't know, feeling
rage?
very lethargic
Where's
or
the
anything.
moodiness?
Happy for you. Really am. Kinda. But across the board, it seemed like our cravings returned full force. What made the cravings get so hard in week 4 wasn't solely the fact that our bodies were starved for sugar, but the mental associations we develop in connection to sugary treats. We condition ourselves to crave sweets through our habits. For all of us at Team Theorist, weeks 3 and 4 were exhausting, with lots of travel and late nights. And historically, we all used sweets to self-medicate through those, to get through the pain and keep going. But without those crutches to lean on, it made us hungry and angry. So
Aha!
we're joining our
There it
bodies
is.
working against us. Week 4 was really about deconditioning ourselves, forcing our bodies to just accept that they weren't going to be getting sugar no matter how big of a tantrum they threw. And luckily, as we crested into week 5, it was time for the experiment to end.
Week
Let me tell you,
5.
friends, there is nothing sweeter in the world than crossing a finish line. Even if the lack of sugar did leave us with a bit of a one-track mind.
Donuts, donuts, donuts.
Nuts, donuts.
Can you blame us? I mean, this episode just lasted a couple minutes, but this was a full month of all of our lives. We decided that
nah.
as a final experiment to see
And
just
you
how
did
much
this
our
all
bodies
in
had
January?
responded to a change in
Uh-oh.
sugar consumption. We'd stuff our faces with some donuts as a final reward. But honestly, despite all of us looking forward to the sweet relief of sweets, we came out on the other side of this with a brand new perspective. And that's the most fascinating part about this whole thing. Every single one of us came out of this feeling more informed and better equipped to take control of the things that we're consuming in our day-to-day lives. Sugar was such an intrinsic part of my daily life prior to this experiment, and it's something that I never really thought about. But now I find myself going to the grocery store and actively looking at the nutrition facts, analyzing the things that I'm putting in my cart and asking myself, is this actually something that I should be putting in my body?
It feels like I'm taking ownership over my own health in a way that I've never done before and never prioritized before, but as someone who's getting up in the years, probably makes sense for me to do more and more
Up in the
increasingly.
ears.
You're right there with me, Steph. Sorry, hate to break it to you. We did this because it's a trendy topic in food, but we also did this before we wound up our time on food theory because we need to.
Yeah, but it's dire.
Please
Stephanie,
don't
confronting our
remind
own
me.
mortality aside,
Please.
Ash and Kai also came to a similar point of view.
Every time you remind me, it's a sad day.
I feel a lot of the same way. I am so proud of myself for making more, I think, conscious choices about what I'm eating in terms of snacks and also just like full meals.
Yeah.
Like I have eaten so many vegetables and
Yes,
fruits and
yeah.
plants.
Right?
I feel like this feels like an achievement for me. Like
Yeah.
I've gotten so many different plants and whole grains into my diet,
Yeah.
and I feel so awesome about that. So I'm really proud of myself for making those calls and for getting it done.
I'm kind of in the same boat as Ash and Steph as well. That I am, and Matt, because I do feel very proud of myself.
Wow.
Fine, it's fine.
I am
All
proud of myself
around me.
because I also feel like that this entire month I have definitely reached for definitely more fruit, more vegetables. My snacking habits have changed completely
Yeah.
because instead of engorging myself on an entire bag of Oreos, I've had to transition over to a bag of grapes, which
Yeah.
And Kai wasn't alone. All of our snacking habits had drastically changed over the course of this month for the better. And in
Yes.
very surprising ways. I, for one, had an old friend come knocking back on my stomach's door.
I gotta say, Steph and I went to the grocery store last night knowing that today was the last day,
Yeah,
right?
we
So,
knew.
like, we knew that we were done and we didn't have to get more
It's-
sugar-free stuff. but we
Open,
got a lot
open
more
the Dunkin'
sugar-free stuff.
the Dunkin'
And not only
Donut
that, when it comes
box
to
like it's
snacking,
a
I'm
buried
like, oh,
treasure.
what did I get? I went with the salt.
Open it like it's the
stuff.
the judgment's
I
treasure.
did. I'm like, you know what?
We did an episode on those. They're very healthy for you.
Run it back. World of Macadamia. It was a weird episode.
You got us.
But you got us. And I like macadamia nuts now.
If you're lost, make sure you checked out the episode that we did over on macadamia nuts and healthy fats. But when it came to snack cravings, I think Ash ultimately had us all beat.
We traveled recently for like all of the shooting that we were doing out of the state. And in the airport, I was trying to find some kind of snack, something sweet, and legitimately, I had the thought, wow, an apple would smack right now. And I was like, oh my gosh, look at me go. I'm craving fruit. That's amazing.
You're
The
craving
discoveries didn't
fruit.
stop there. I, for one, have been intolerant to fructose for a long time. If I had a large amount of fruit in any one sitting, it was generally bad news for my tummy. During this month, though, I've been able to have fruits and manage them just fine. It was shocking, especially because in researching it afterwards, all I could find was that fructose intolerance doesn't normally just go away. But I suppose the fact that I was leaning away from free sugars and instead leaning into good, healthier sugars, it allowed my body to recalibrate itself, slowly absorbing those sugars into my system, causing less of a rumbling in my tummy. But before we were able to finally dig into the donuts, there was one last question I had to ask.
What? what?
No, Santi didn't do this, by the way.
No,
He didn't. He cheated.
Santi not do
Because
this?
He went on his honeymoon
Yeah, he went on
during
his
this
honeymoon.
and lived his best life eating sushi in Japan while we sat here and suffered. Santi,
Wow.
That's why you only had 83 HP, Santi. This is exactly why.
Whoa.
Wow.
Hell, man.
Guys getting it all
You
out.
traitor.
That's the lore, and that's not a theory.
Santi's not going to be happy about that one. But I think what was most noteworthy here was that we all planned to
You
try and
traitor.
doing
You
some
betrayed
version of
us.
this diet moving forward. Just, a more sustainable version.
There's probably
I can't really
a better
blame him. I
balance
wouldn't
to
do
strike
this.
here of
You
removing
gotta pay me
everything
to
off
do
the
this.
table and going full in on sweets. I'm sure that, as with everything, it's about moderation. But I think it's shown that we can do it. And I think one of the things that's going to be really helpful moving forward, and I know I'm going to personally implement, is like, hey, there's the one day out of the week where I'm like, okay, having my dessert day. And then that's, and I know that's to look forward to. I know that's it. But I know the rest of the week that I'm fine without it. I think that's one of my lessons.
I'm also
Okay.
happy to know that I am able to balance out. I now know how to balance this all out in a much more productive and healthy way than just tearing up a dozen of donuts.
So with all the post-mortem wrapped up, it was time to do some Dunkin' Munchin'.
Cheers.
Who's gonna go out crazy the most?
Cheers. Bing, bing, bing.
I would have grabbed 2, to be honest. It's just me. I might grab 2.
Yeah, I'm good, I think.
I don't think I do.
It's interesting. It isn't as satisfying as I was hoping. Oh,
What?
man.
What do you mean?
Sugar from-
Y'all wait for me.
It's a sad day. We've ruined dessert for ourselves, but the science
No!
actually surprised me. You see, our taste buds, like every other part of our body, follow a certain life cycle. In their case, it's approximately 10 days, meaning slightly after 10 days, you've essentially reset your taste buds. And if in those 10 days you haven't introduced them to more sugar, well, then they become accustomed to the lower levels that they received, like the fruits that we were eating. And therefore, they develop a new, lower threshold. Not only that, but our brains also become recalibrated to new levels of dopamine because they're not constantly being flooded with new sugary snacks. So when we all took a bite out of the donuts, which tend to hover between 15 and 20 grams of sugar, our now more sensitive taste buds were actually overloaded and perceived a lower intensity of sweetness than what we were used to. It sort of just got to a point where the new taste buds were like, yeah, that's enough, we get it, which left us with dissatisfaction and a craving for sugar that our bodies had now become accustomed to. On that note, though, despite our taste buds not really feeling the donuts, the same could not be said about our bodies. About half an hour after eating the donut, I was feeling like I had electricity surging through my veins. I felt a lot like the Flash, ready to speed through like a lightning bolt. Once my body actually started digesting that giant influx of sugar and that massive dopamine jolt hit my brain, felt like I could take on the world for about 5 minutes, at which point my stomach just started to hurt. After I stopped being able to feel the sugar coursing through my fingertips, all I felt was the donut just sitting there like a rock in my guts. It wasn't fun at all, and all I wanted was just a big old bite of a carrot. So there you have it, my friends. After everything we went through, all we tasted
You
was
ruined
an abundance
dessert
of
for
sugar
yourself.
that
This is
honestly
horrible.
left us putting the donuts down after a couple of bites. Also, we all got a stomachache after a couple of minutes. We'd looked forward
Dang.
to that moment for so long, disappointment. But you know what wasn't disappointing? There's something amazing about taking control over what you eat, analyzing your snacking habits, making informed decisions about what you're putting in your body. Because at the end of the day, reclaiming control over your life, that's probably the sweetest reward of them all. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory.
Okay, so that's gonna be it in the video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like the video so I know you guys enjoy. Comment down below, what do you guys think? Would you take control of your eating habits? Because I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Back in the day, I was a big boy. I'm a big boy. But recently, 2024, I've been, lessening my input. And I will admit, I kind of like the results I'm having. I'm not as big boy, but somewhat still. The big boy is still here, but, I'm a little thinner now. So, yeah. That's going to be the video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I already said that. But, anyways, and subscribe. We're trying to upload daily. This is Juan Gamer 4 signing off.